When we speak of civil liberties and civil rights, people are beginning to understand that the most fundamental of these is the right to work in our society. And what is occurring in Guyana is that the government is making political capital out of the indefensible position of one who is either unemployed or is very close to the line of being unemployed.
I want to say to you all in no uncertain terms that this government is disrespectful to black people. And if people disrespect you, you have a right to disrespect them.
I am saying now that we have started, now that we have come together, do not sleep. Don't let us go back quietly into the night. Protest must be the order of the day.
Watch me. You see? Give me. Oh, no. Hello, man. Why the hell you harassing me? You can't see that the both of us can't agree. Every day is a fighting inside the place. You beat me bad, you black and blue up me face. Every day you come home, you what you eat. You hand me like puppet hanging on string. I walk in the house just like a zombie. Solomon, don't you them children going crazy? Get out me house. Solomon, you're a stinking lash. Solomon, and you are a blight. Solomon, get off me life, let me put a light in me life. Solomon, give him. Oh no. When you get paid, I cannot see a cent. I have to borrow just to pay the rent. You never home in the time of need. You on the street trying to plant your seed. The children don't know their own daddy. In day and night, who they see is me. You walk in the house before daybreak. Solomon, how much could a woman take? Get out my house. You're a stinking lash, and you are a blind. Get off me like let me put the light in the window. Solomon, Solomon. Marriage life is never good for me. For 16 years, all I see is misery. So much heartache and pressure I pass through. I put up with things just because I love you. You pick up a stray cat from out the street. The children's life, it was never sweet. You change your action while you're at home. Solomon, this life I prefer to be alone and alone and alone. Get out my house. You're a stinking lash, and you are a blind. Get off me, let me put a light in my life. Shalom, man. Gimme. Shalom, man. Shalom, man. Shalom. You better take your things and go. Shalom, man. Me, I want you no more. You're a man who never have a cent, but in your pocket, money making accidents. When the weekend come, the phone can get ease. It's may I speak to Solomon, please? I said, who are you? I am the mother of Solomon child. I said, what? This stingy man on the running way. Get out me house. Solomon, you're a stinking light. Solomon, and you are a blight. Solomon, get out me life. Let me put a light in me night. Solomon. Gimme. Hello! Gimme.
And a very good evening to you, and welcome to Politics 101 this evening, Monday evening, the start of a brand new week. And wherever you're joining us from, we would like to welcome you, all of you, today. Whether you're joining us from Guyana, the wider Caribbean, North America, Europe, South America, Africa, wherever you're joining us from, or you're in Asia. Good evening to those of you who are joining us from Johannesburg, South Africa. Very good evening to you. Wherever you are, it's good to be alive and it's good to be Guyanese. We are alive to tell the story of our time. We are alive to witness for our children and our grandchildren. And those of you who are children, you are alive to witness for your children to come. Calypso Rose, Solomon, last week we played Singing Francine. Run away. Cat does run away and dog does run away. Woman, why you can run away too? And so we played Calypso Rose there. Solomon, you're a stinking louse. You're not taking care of business, Solomon. And Calypso Rose, she's still going strong. She's still going strong. Fire in me wire. But you know, she's still around, still singing, still appearing on stage, and she is about 84 now. 84. Calypso Rose out of Tobago. Welcome to all of you. Since last week, the president went to Parliament, to the National Assembly. Parliament is really the National Assembly plus the president. The National Assembly went to the National Assembly and made his pronouncements there. Of course, the opposition parliamentarians did the right thing. they stayed out. Well, that's not new. Remember when Granger went to address the National Assembly, the PPP stayed out. So they can't complain now that the opposition did them the same thing. In such a National Assembly, you have to use it creatively. You have to use it creatively. You have to use it creatively because there's not very much can be done in terms of influencing decisions, influencing policies, because of the winner-take-all system. The opposition doesn't have much say, and so there's not much you can do there. So you have to choose the moments when you are going to participate, and then you choose other moments when you will not participate. You have to have some imagination, because sometimes we beat up on the parliamentarians, but they can't do much. They cannot do much, if anything at all, beyond going to parliament and being there. There's not much they can do. And I know we get frustrated with our leadership, and we tend to take it out on the ones that are in front of us. And the parliamentarians are an easy target, and some of them don't make it easy for themselves. They make it easy to be targeted. Sorry, because that's all they do. They just do parliament, and they don't do anything. And I usually refer to, the parliamentarians, people like Coretta MacDonald and Nemo Flew Bess, as examples of parliamentarians who are not confining their activism to the parliament. They do work outside of parliament, and so therefore expanding the profile of the parliamentarian. Our parliamentarians are not full-time parliamentarians, like they say in the United States. The members of Congress are full-time. They have staff and all those kinds of stuff. Our parliamentarians are part-time parliamentarians. And so therefore, beyond going to parliament when there is a sit-in, and the sit-ins are far and in between, beyond doing that, there's not much else to do. And so the parliamentarians have to become activists outside of parliament. And they're not running things themselves, because they're part of a collective. And the whip, the chief whip, and the leader and so forth have to instruct them. But it was good to see them outside of parliament. To see them outside of parliament the other day, and some of you were there with them. But the work of parliamentarians, as I said, is not just in parliament; it's working in your constituency. That's very important to service your constituency. And so as I said, we tend to unfairly beat up on them. They can't make much happen in parliament. But like I said, a lot of them invite the beating up because they don't take their work beyond the National Assembly. Good evening to all of you who are joining us tonight. Brother Tacuma Ogunseye is here of the WPA, and we're going to be talking about the president's announcements in the National Assembly the other day. The cash transfer, not cash grant. You notice he didn't say cash grant, cash transfer, because that's the correct term. You know, that's the correct term. At least that's the term that was used by Professor Clive Thomas. And he went there and announced the cash transfer to each household of $200,000. And there'll be lots of debate, lots of talk, lots of discussion since then, as it must be. There must be discussion. Today, the WPA had a press conference this morning and weighed in on the issue. After all, it was 2018, 6 years ago, 6 long years ago, before Forced Oil. Professor Clive Thomas went to Buxton and threw the idea on the table that when oil begins to flow, that the Guyanese people can benefit directly from it. As happens in societies like ours, you know, and we got to correct ourselves as we go along. Those who matter, those with the microphones, you know, the proposal didn't come from their party, and they start to tell us what was wrong with the proposal before talking about what was right with the proposal. Mr. Jack Dio said, cash transfers, it was technically unsound. That's what he said. It was technically unsound and could not be implemented before 2030, if ever. And then the other one, Moti, you know, Moti, Nandlal. Like run, you know. Teacher John said, he got away bib. Bib. He mouth a run. Cash transfer will destroy families. That foolish big man, as you all young people have said. Foolish big man. What does he know about cash transfer? Who only cash transfer know, to quote C.L.R. James. He knows, as them big men would say in the village, you know nothing about nothing. You run him out. Cash transfers will break up families and turn Guyanese into parasites. I want him to come out now and tell Irfan Ali. Tell Irfan Ali that cash transfer will break up families and turn Guyanese into parasites. You know. The government at the time, unfortunately, did not embrace the idea too. That was unfortunate. That was unfortunate. I saw a report today. I think former Minister of Finance Winston Jordan was on the PNC program, I think Nation Watch, and he, according to the report I saw on Gordon Mosley News Source, that he said had the government embraced the idea and had gone to Parliament and passed a law, then we would not have had to wait for Irfan Ali to come and give a one-off and so on. It would have been there by law, and once the oil began to pump, Guyanese would have benefited from oil in a structured way. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. That was unfortunate, but you know, we can't dwell on those things. Here we are now. The PPP now saying $200,000 cash grant, a one-off. When Professor Thomas floated the idea, he said, based on his estimation of how much oil reserves we had, that if you took 10% of it and you divide it among the households, each household would get around 5,000 US dollars, sorry, which would have been $1 million Guyana dollars. And that was before, because when Professor Thomas said, look, we had oil reserve upwards of 5 billion barrels of oil, and people were laughing. Today, they're announcing that we have 11 billion barrels of oil. And based on our research, led by Professor Thomas, that's a conservative estimate. We are seeing closer to 30 billion barrels of oil. Now, Exxon is not going to tell us how many barrels of oil we have in reserve. They're not going to tell us. And our government is such lazy, and all they're concerned about is remaining in power. They themselves are not going to tell us. But based on our research, there is at least there are 20 billion barrels of oil. And we think it's closer to 30 billion barrels of oil. So here we are. As we said today in our press conference, that this $200,000 is more an election gimmick, than an attempt to distribute in a democratic and structured way oil resources to our people. But the discussion is going on there, and we will continue to have that discussion. Tacuma Ogunseye is here. Let me bring him in. Good evening, Brother Tacuma.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Hines and your viewers. It's always good to be here with you.
The WPA had a press conference this morning in which it weighed in on the announcement by the president in Parliament, in particular, the cash transfer of $200,000, one-off cash transfer that they threw on the table. And the WPA did a clinical analysis of what's out there, trying to educate our people so that they have a sense of what is going on. When you first heard that the president had gone to the National Assembly and announced a $200,000 cash transfer, didn't use the term cash grant, per household, as a WPA member, what was your immediate response?
Well, in a way, I wasn't really surprised, if I'm to speak personally, because I was hearing some rumors from PPP circles that something to that effect was on the table, but I had no knowledge that he would have done it when he went to Parliament. But I did begin to pick up that they had intended to announce some major payout around Christmas time, So in a way, I wasn't too surprised. But the important thing is that we in the WPA had committed ourselves since 2018 to make sure that whichever government came to power in the 2020 elections, that as a party who have been promoting this idea as part of a comprehensive strategy to deal with poverty, because we believe poverty is important. And for us, it wasn't simply an election gimmick. We recognize the value it had in election mobilization. But when we presented the proposal in 2018, we were driven by the concern to use oil now that we have, for the first time in the history of the country, a chance to deal with poverty in a profound way. Our lens were tied to committing the country to use 10% of the oil revenues to begin a process, to deal with poverty in the form of cash transfer to every Guyanese household on an annual basis. We want it to be a predictable amount, and a reliable amount that people could know at the end of a certain point in the year, they will be getting this payment, so they could plan to use the payment as a poverty intervention to improve their material condition. And we were, and this year's political judgment, the WPA was always confident that based upon Professor Thomas' analysis of the potential oil revenues that we were likely to get going forward, we became convinced in our conviction and forming our conviction that it would be criminal for any Guyanese political leadership, whether it come from the PPP or the PNC or wherever it come from, in the context of oil revenues and the amount of oil revenues we are likely to get, given the smallness of our population, not to commit 10% of those revenues to give each and every Guyanese household the $5,000 or whatever is the value of the 10%, because that will vary as your production increase and as the price of oil increase or decrease. Whatever that 10% is, we felt that politically, no political party could avoid it. So we knew that this was a winning cause and we couldn't lose. But in politics, you want to make things happen as quickly as possible to help to alleviate the sufferings of the people, and so. But we knew that all the political parties, all the political people who were deliberately and maliciously pretending that they don't understand the proposal, pretending that the proposal, is not feasible, and we got it from both sides. And they were, and I remember after the delivery in Buxton, every part of the country we go, because we held a number of community meetings after that. And everywhere you go, it was the most popular proposal throughout the country, across party, across race. And then you had political leaders in the parties, both in the government and the opposition, because the idea didn't come from their party. They began to throw cold water. Who say it isn't technically feasible? Who say it's going to allow Guyanese to get lazy? Who say we don't understand the proposal, we don't understand it? And then there was a concerted effort to confuse things by saying that the WPA want all the oil money to be used as cash transfer to give Guyanese households this $5,000 a year. When we clearly said we want 10% to be used for that, and therefore the government had 90% to deal with all the developmental issues that a government may want to proceed. Intelligent people, they didn't understand, but the wickedness in Guyanese politics across the board, very wickedness, to deprive ordinary people. For the first time in the history of this country, when our people have a chance to deal with poverty in a profound way, you got political leaders who almost automatically take up a anti-people's position, simply because it didn't come from the WPA, and I believe profoundly, it is a reflection of their anti-people's mentality, because even if initially you start with a little pettiness, because I mean, politics and human beings and politicians, we are all human beings, and we are not above pettiness. But quickly you could overcome your pettiness and say, look, this is it's a real progressive policy, and let us implement it as quickly as possible. And I agree with Jordan. If the coalition government didn't play the games that Granger them play and implement it, we would be in a better place. And we must remember that when policies are always subject to reform. So when you're implementing a policy, it don't have to be 100% perfect, because as you go on, you can reform it if you see problems develop. But politically, the opposition in this country is a little self-defeating, because a policy like that, from the time it came from the WP, a fraternal opposition party, it should have been embraced automatically by all the opposition parties, and we demanded from the government, regardless of whatever reservations we have on what our counter proposal. You see, when you're dealing with a government like this, parties and the opposition have to be smart. Okay? We need deliveries to our people. And if the PNC come out with a good proposal, okay, rather than we trying to fight it down and to refine it, support it. When we reach the parliament for implementation and reach the technical places to refine things, we could refine things. But politically, the opposition have to come out of this mode of fighting within themselves policy positions, rather than recognizing the value of the policies and collectively supporting it and put collective pressure on the PPP. Down the road, when we go in power, you could refine it. But I think we are at a point where, rather than contesting against each other about which policy is better, giving the PPP space for maneuver, we should narrow the thing around the PPP and to present to them, collective policies. And that is why, as you have always been arguing, okay, we need the opposition to come together and begin to, talk about the coalition and how they're going to approach the elections. And in that sense, they could be able to do some of the things that I'm suggesting.
Tacuma, Aubrey said here, as at Granger took WP advice, Guyanese would have been in a better place. And I highlighted that comment because I think it gets to exactly what you were talking about. Because here's the thing. Mr. Ali went to the National Assembly with a big microphone, and he announced a menu of goodies, gimmicks. Chief among those gimmicks was the cash transfer. He never said it was the WPA's idea. He doesn't have to, because of the nasty politics. He should have done it, but he didn't. What we found is that a lot of our supporters, opposition supporters, did not know it was an opposition idea. I'm going to your point that you're saying that we as opposition forget about our differences in terms of whether it's household or individuals, and had we taken that policy initiative and held it up, the PPP would not have been able to do what it did. In a sense, it attempted a coup on us, because it went to the parliament, took our idea, the WPA's idea, took the PNC idea of free education, took the minimum wage, which we are arguing that we should have a universal basic income, and that it, the PNC says that Guyanese should have a minimum wage of over $150,000 to $200,000. The man took all of our ideas, throw it out there. Our people, of course, I mean, if you hear you're getting money, you're going to perk up. And, regardless of our political party membership, Here is the government say it's going to give you $200,000 free education at the university. It's going to raise the minimum wage, and here the opposition the next day we are scrambling. We are scrambling to say, but it's we idea. It's we idea. When in effect, our supporters did not know. Some of our supporters, some of them would be opportunistic, but some of them, especially the younger people, would genuinely not know that it's an idea. And even then, we had to, in a sense, on this program on Thursday night, yell at some of our opposition people and say, it's Professor Thomas's idea. And we know in politics, people associate names with policy. So when you talk about free education, Burnham, that's in people's head. When you say cash transfers, Clive Thomas. And it's one of the ways people tend to associate with things when you put a name to the thing. And because, as you say, of our nasty politics, we fail to do that. And so we are really now, in a sense, the morning after, scrambling to tell our supporters, look, this idea is our idea, one. Two, this is how the thing was proposed. And what they are proposing there is really just the form of the idea and not the essence of the idea. And so your point is so well taken that perhaps we in the opposition, we are missing a beat by not recognizing the superior nature of our policy ideas. Now, you've been around politics now. You know the PPP very well. The PPP hammer this idea. They nail this idea. When it comes to free education at university, they discontinued it. And they argue that we are want to give away money. Rafi Dev and them in the Guyana Times just last week, waded into the WPA. These old Marxists want to give away money to people. Right? Clearly, Ali didn't give Rafi Dev a call and say, Rafi, don't hammer them people because we're going to take their idea and implement it. He didn't give them a call. But Rafi Dev must be shamed there now, because only last week he was carrying on how these old men in WPA want to give away the country money. But the point is, and I'm coming to my question to you, the PPP is not the kind of party that is going to take the opponent's idea and implement it unless they are forced to. Something massive has been happening in our society to force the PPP to at least inform FORM, adopt a WPA proposal, adopt a PNC proposal. Something must have been happening. Something is happening that we may not be aware of to force the PPP to do something like that. Tacuma, put on your speculative hat, put on your political science hat. What could have driven the PPP to get to this point where they adopt ideas from the PNC and the WPA that they've been cussing from the time Noah was a scout to now?
I think the first thing you got to recognize is dealing with Jack Dio.
Yes.
I think we have to get Jack a jacket. Jack Dio is the kind of politician who does what he feels is necessary to achieve his objective. He's not a shamefaced politician. So Jack Dio tomorrow will cost down something. And if he sees a benefit, tomorrow he will swing and pretend that he never cost it down. So that's part of the psyche of Jack Dio that we're dealing with. But more profoundly, I think the PPP is beginning to feel the pressures in the society over the people's concern for the increase in the cost of living pressure, amidst the government daily pronouncement that Guyana is one of the richest, if not the richest country in the world per capita. And people are asking themselves, if we are among the richest country in the world, why should I live in that kind of amount of poverty? And I think that this concern has long gone beyond the concern of the opposition constituency, and it have taken root in the PPP constituency among the poor and powerless and the majority Indians who doesn't really benefit the same way like how the rich and the privileged, the Indian community who close to the PPP benefit. And I think that they sense, because they're doing polls and the PPP is a party on the ground, and they're beginning to feel the pressure that as much as they're pretending that they have things fully under control, they know that there's an unpredictability in electoral politics that could send things out of expectations. Incumbents lose elections. It's an electoral reality. And I think that they've decided that, look, we have to begin to get into people's consciousness and to let them believe that somehow we are caring about them, and therefore we are implementing these nice policies in order to bring relief to them. But in fact, but it's a double-edged sword. They're also doing it to weaken the platform of the opposition when the elections come, because if I take all your ideas, and no matter how I screw it up, but I incorporated in my line of march, then you got very little to argue for. And I think that they work it out. So a part of it is to deal with the pressures in the society over the governance, over poverty that is cut across race and is cut across in party, and they begin to feel the tension. And coming close to the elections, any government know that elections also could be unpredictable things, and as much as you think you're in safe territory, anything could happen. Therefore, you got to be very concerned. And the PPP is not the APMU, AFC. The PPP, when it comes to power, they don't play with that. And whatever they got to do to maintain the power, they're going to do, both in terms of policy, both in terms of rigging the elections if necessary. The PPP got no bones about that.
Sorry, I thought you were finished.
So those are the things to me that are factors at play. And if we accept that, then the counter that we have to do is to move the struggle to the streets and begin to educate our people on the street corner. You see, okay, the social media education will be continuous, but the thing about human beings and human psyche, when you're getting one thing steady, it is lead to a point of diminishing returns. I am not saying this social media point reach there, but what I'm trying to say, it is easy for people to forget something they hear on social media, they hear it all the time. But when you carry to them, at the street corner, if the opposition start to keep meetings all over the country, and so it brings the people's consciousness up, okay, to par, and it makes it difficult for the government to manipulate. And I don't think the opposition in our condition got the luxury to wait for when the government call elections to start the street campaign. I mean, I think the opposition will be well advised to start the street campaign long before elections. Jack Dio Ali started in the parliament last week. Okay, we should begin to start with counter, because that's the only way we can counter. Government got policy, instruments, and tools. The opposition got to use the tools that we got. We got tools, a different set of tools.
And I hear you about the streets, and but you can go on the streets and talk stupidness. So I want you to talk here about what we are going on the streets to tell people, because here's the story. These people have taken our initiative, and they have pitched it as their initiative. Our supporters are going to be glad for that $200,000. Whether is WPI there, PPPI there, PNCI there, they're glad for it. All right? We can't tell them don't take it because it's a one-off, then do the thing right, and so on. While at the same time, we have to warn them that this thing is a gimmick. Tell us how we balance those two things. How is it that we don't dissuade our people from recognizing that, look, this is your money, whether it's one half, then do it properly, and so on and thing, but it's your money, and we have to ensure that you all get access to it, but at the same time, don't be fooled that this is something that the PPP is doing because they love you all, they want to get rid of poverty. So I'm saying, for me, it's not whether you go up on the streets or you go up on social media or what, it's what you're saying when you go there, because they have made our task a little bit more difficult than it would have ordinarily been had they not adopted our ideas. So talk to me. How are we going to get past this hurdle? Because it's an hurdle. It may be short term, but it's a hurdle that we have. We have to admit that when he went there and did it, he pulled a fast one. All right? And we have to admit, in a sense, that we now got to play catch up. Talk to me.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, given the poverty reality in the country, every guy in his household will be glad to get $200,000 at any point in the process. So that goes without question. And it is not our duty to tell people not to take the money. In the first place, the people's money. Okay, but what we have to do is to use the PPP opportunism to our advantage. Firstly, we got to make sure that they can't retreat from this proposal. And as you correctly have been selling it, this is an adaptation. They're adopting the WPA cash transfer idea. And of course, they're only making a baby step. But we have to see it as an initial step in the right direction. And since they have put their feet in the right direction, their foot got to remain there, and we keep dragging them to the 5,000. That is the methodology in terms of our political approach to this thing. The next thing is, we know the PPP proposal is not genuine, and they're going to use it for political advantage. We know what happened with the COVID payment, where a number of our supporters did not get the money, and I know that very much, because I got a close family who didn't get the money, and even though she named supposed to be on the list, when the person came, they go to Indian neighbor and they gave them the money. When she reminded them that the woman said, "You were named up on this list." And when she asked to speak to her, she was very high-handed, So we know that this is going to repeat itself. But as the opposition, we got to understand there's a difference between people fighting for $25,000 or $30,000 and fighting for $200,000. And we got to make it clear to our supporters that we have to prepare to go to battle to make sure that all our supporters who are entitled get this money. Because I'm telling you, it's going to be easier for us to pull in line the disaffected and the people who didn't get the money into struggle. And we got to make it early so the government know that you're playing with this 200,000. We supporters got to get the money, and we preparing we supporters. If we don't get the money, you're behaving in a certain way. You're behaving like how we behave with the COVID money. This is real money in relationship to COVID. So we have to begin to draw the battle lines, and we got to be so we could deal with the opportunism of the PPP, and we could limit, what they are planning to do, and at the same time, if they do what they're planning to do, we take it to another level, and that, I think, is very important for us as we go forward. Now, I think that we have to begin to cultivate our support base to understand that in struggle, we don't always win things in one walk. I mean, if you watch the history of any social progress in the country over the years. That is right to trade unionism, right to vote. Okay, we had voting, at a certain level, then we get vote. Okay, so 21, then we get vote 18 and all kinds of things. And we have to let people understand when we win, as you put it, small, or what people may consider small victories, but are important victories. We have to celebrate it, and we have to build upon it. And I think this is an instant where the fact that we get them to accept the notion of cash transfer. And I'm telling you something. In my judgment, I know the PPP is going to, at some point, if they remain in power, they're going to implement our proposal 100%. But they're going to do it in stages. If you left them to themselves, they do it in stages. We don't want them to do it in stages. We want to win the elections and get rid of them so that we got a new government to come, whether they're part of the government or not part of the government, that could deal with the matter. So as an opposition, we can't wholly and solely depend on what the PPP do. But I'm telling you, don't fool yourself. The PPP is smart enough. They know when them big oil money come in, they can't tell guys that they can't pay them because they're going to be creating something that they know they're going to have to control. So they have them prepared to pay it. But you have to drive them to pay it fast. Yeah. And I'm saying, okay, we're in an election year, so we ain't got much time for driving them. We got the important thing is to drive them out the power so that the new government could hasten the process.
Yes, and
we have the PPP where we want them, whether it's for mystic reasons or not. Politically, we got them where we want them.
That's the point. We got them where we want them, and we want our supporters to understand that we got them where we want them. And that is very, very important. In that, we have won this first round. We got some more rounds to go, but we have won this first round. I know we have had a long battle, OG, because we had, the PPP is hammering Guyanese, hammering the opposition. And in many regards, we have not been as militant as we ought to have been, both at the level of leadership and at the level of followership. And many of our supporters have begun to question us. We talking too much. We come on these programs and we chat theory and no action and so forth. And we ourselves sometimes have had to push that envelope to say, look, we need to do more. But don't you think that this outcome here with the PPP and the cash transfer on the education, free education at the university, don't you think in many regards, this line of action, that is to continue to advocate that in a sense, we can say to our people, there is usefulness in this aspect of the struggle. It shouldn't be the only aspect, because we really should be more militant. We really should be making more noise. We really should be really pushing back and undermining this government. But in a sense, the doubts that you all have, that we may be, talking. But in this case, ideas matter. What do you think?
No, I think you're quite right. There could be no struggle without ideas. We got to be clear about this. The history of humanity have shown there could be no struggle without ideas. So we can't argue against ideas. Okay, a judgment has to be made anyhow in any idea. How best to push these ideas and to bring it to, to a point where the society benefits, from its maximum possibility. So that is the role of the political practitioners and maybe theoreticians, and so it is not in our situation. We are correct, okay, to push the struggle ideas. If you all weren't pushing the struggle ideas, and the parties weren't pushing the struggle ideas, and they face the social media platforms weren't pushing the struggle ideas, we would have been a worse place. We'll be worst place in terms of doing any other forms of action. So we got to be clear. We have to continue that work, but we just have to add some additional things to the work. So it's not a question of, I mean, in simple, the thing about politics is that you have to communicate at the layperson level. The way the layperson will know about the illness, it's not the same way the doctor will know about the illness. The doctor got a more profound understanding of the illness. Fortunately, we are like the doctors of the dealer, and the masses is like the ordinary people. And sometimes we have to go down to their language. And when they're saying that the opposition is doing nothing, they don't believe that. That's not really what they're saying. They know we're doing. But what they really say, you aren't doing the things we think you are supposed to do. That is it. You see? So when the PPP is saying that the opposition supporters ain't got time with them, they don't understand what's going on. More you hear we supporters telling we wasting time. What they're telling you, we ready for deal with these PPP people. We ready, Are you ready? Holding in hand. If you are providing leadership, you're ready to deal with them. So, and it is that contradiction that people like me points to when I say we have oversaturated ourselves with the analysis. I understand the profound need for it, and we have to continue and understand the worth of it. But I also know that if you keep talking and you don't do certain things for the ground, the elections will catch up with you. And then the PPP wants you to fight the elections in an atmosphere that they create. I mean, in normal democracy and in normal political contestation, we will have general consensus on the atmosphere for democratic and free and fair elections. But in this environment here, where the PPP dominate GCOM, they're spending the oil money like if it's their money, and they're doing all the corruption and the disrespect for governance and democracy. You're not in a normal electoral contestation. Therefore, the opposition can't play normal democratic politics like how the people could play in Barbados and probably Trinidad. And so this is a different ball game. And this is a ball game that if you're going to get the best out of your constituency when election day come, you got to do some things, more than a normal electoral party in a different environment may have to do. I remember in 2005 to 2006 elections, when Corbyn and the PNC faced the challenge, okay, there are two sets of challenge. The rise of the AFC, okay, and the fact that their constituency have become, a little dissatisfied with the intensity of the struggle, and they felt that Corbyn is getting soft and so forth and so forth. And they were under that kind of pressure. Look, I remember the discussion we had officially and with Corbyn in Agda, unofficially when we brace at the individual level and the small group level, when we brace outside the formal setting and so forth and so forth. But what had faced Robert? He had to make a decision whether he's going to go into those 2006 elections, okay, the way in which the Starbuck News and them were putting the pressure on him that he got to be a statesman, he can't engage in bulldog politics. When he constituency was telling him, we need some bulldog politics here. And he decided to go in as a statesman, play the decency, and he gets his ass cut. And I'm telling you, Norton is facing the same kind of story here, but in a different way. And I don't want to get too far into it, but I'm just giving them the benefit of my own understanding since I was involved with all of these things. You have to, while people are going to tell you that certain behaviors will make you lose votes, you have to make some hard political judgments. And Norton and the PNC got to make two hard judgments. One is how they want to contest in the elections, whether they're going to coalition or they go by themselves. Two, whether they're going to fight for change in the governance system before elections, so that at the end of the day, when we don't vote race, the Constitution says they have to be part of the executive with the PPP and everybody, okay, and run the country together. Those are the two challenges at historical moment face the Norton and the PNC. Okay, and the general opposition, but I want to narrow it just for this discussion at the moment. Those are the two real political challenges, and you can't separate them. And I'm going, and it's not easy for them given the whole conception of politics, and given the way in which the political struggle have been developing. It is hard for PNC tell the supporters you got to work with the PPP right now, as hard the PP tell the supporters got to work with the PNC right now, okay, in face of the elections. But politics is more about elections. We have to look at the threat that the country faces from the external vultures and the challenges that oil going to pose to us. And our politicians have to rise beyond the local contestation, understand the real contestation for Guyana lies outside Guyana with non-Guyanese. And we have to provide leadership. And there has to be, as if we're wise, there must be a historical compromise. And it has to happen, in my judgment, before elections. Elections by itself will solve nothing.
Right,
but
right.
Once the country decides to go into elections, the opposition, in my view, got to go as a coalition and got to try to win those elections, but don't make the mistake, okay, of not moving to shared governance and reform and end the winner-take-all constitution.
And we're going to get to shared governance and that later. We come down to the WPA. You've given good advice there to the PNC. Let's talk about advice to your own party, the WPA, because the WPA does face challenges. If the president had not gone to that place last week and come up with those proposals, including the WPA proposal, the WPA wouldn't be in the news today. The media in Guyana don't pay attention to quote-unquote small parties, third parties. In their head, they got three parties in Guyana, PNC, PPP, and the AFC. And all the coverage go there. WPA doesn't matter in that mix. Yet, every now and again, once or twice a year, in a big way, they and the country have to come to grips with what I call the disturbing presence of a party like the WPA. In a sense, the WPA has to fight for space and so forth. And so it has its own challenges. As you look at the present situation, how is the WPA planning to navigate all the challenges it faces as a quote-unquote third party of a particular type? Because the AFC is a third party, but it's a different type of third party from the WPA. How does the WPA navigate these challenges, knowing fully well that they are objective forces that really don't want the WPA in the mix because it makes the politics too hard for them? And there's a way in which people like easy politics. PNC versus PPP, you get a AFC who can bring, if they go on their own, they're going to bring a minority government and everything going to be okay after them. Easy politics. If you bring the WPA in that mix, you upset that easy politics. And I know as part of the WPA that we are very conscious of the challenges. Talk to our audience.
I have been around.
Talk to our
I have been
audience.
around for a long time.
Yes, go ahead.
I've been around for a long time. And I've, when you are part of the age of 16 to 72, a lot of time, I have seen all kinds of manifestations of politics, and I understand the players, and I understand the motion of history and the social forces in the country. And and unlike people may think, I think from the time the WPA came into being, before Walter, during Walter, and after Walter, the WPA have been exerting tremendous influence on the body politics of the country. And I think that a lot of people are hoping the WPA die out because it will free them to behave in a certain way. The WPA still operates as a moral force in the society among the political elite, okay, when it comes to certain things, even though they wouldn't admit it. But I'm going to go further to say that there's going to be no national government, including the PPP and the PNC, unless the WP is involved. There's going to be no national government in a hurry, except if Venezuela crossed the border with the army and force we into something. Put that aside, both sides would not feel comfortable in a national government without the WP. And I think all of them understand it. As much as them, but both the PPP and the PNC, in my judgment, I could be wrong about the PNC at present because everything is evolving. But if I were to use my historical lens, I think all of them want us, but they want us in a minimal role. They want to take advantage of the authority that we bring, of the environment that we could create in the country, but they don't want to compensate us politically in a big way. I think that is deep in the political equation. It could change over time and so with different leadership. So what I'm trying to say is that the WPA is in a unique place where that once we survive and once we remain militant and we became continue to be the drivers of ideas, we are locked into the Guyanese politics and they're locked into us. They can't do nothing without us. But politics and there's politics. And sometimes, parties like in our condition, there could be no successful third party for a long time. So we have to, and we have long come around to accept, unlike the Caribbean left, we have always had a different approach to politics and the political engagement and the ideological questions and so forth and so forth. And we have always been fairly ideologically nimble. And because, unlike the Caribbean, race has been an important element in our reality, we have had to exercise our minds to that matter in a way that many Caribbean parties didn't have to do. Even sometimes you don't speak, there were periods where we don't speak much about the race thing. Today we are speaking much about it. But our minds have never been disassociated from that because we put the same amount of weight to race and politics. So I'm saying that it would be a political mistake for us to believe and allow ourselves to be convinced that we are a minor force in the equation. Given the nature of Guyana politics, we have become a major force, not necessarily a major electoral force, but a major political force that can't be discounted. And we have to use that to the benefit, not simply for the party, but for the country and the constituency, the working people, the poor and the powerless, the multiracial poor and powerless that we identify with, and our politics, is directed to. So I will say that the WPA is in a good place. Our major problem in my mind is resource. We're not a party that have a historical connection to business. We're not a party that have a historical connection to get funds from abroad. For many years, the PPP were getting funds from the socialist blocs, the Eastern European countries. So they were always well endowed with resources, plus they access to Indian resources and so forth as an opposition party, But the WPA have never developed that kind of connection. And in that sense, it is good because it gives us freedom in our politics, but it is bad in the sense that as the economy and as time go by, politics become now an expensive endeavor that you have to match it with funds. The AFC could not done as well as it did in 2006 without the tremendous resources they got from private sector and they get from external sources. And again, if they're to do well, they will have to be backed by tremendous amount of money. I think there's where in electoral politics, the WPS suffer because we don't have the financial infrastructure to support the party's politics. And that is why we easily been able to be isolated out of the mainstream media. But as I said before, COVID helped us, and you all have been able to use a social thing to break us out of that isolation. So we're in a better place in terms of the consciousness of the people. Now, there's another area where the WP have to pay attention to. We, over the years, have deliberately avoided an aggressive diplomatic initiative generally in the world. Because for a long time, we haven't really sent anybody to the Caribbean and to North America, okay, and to the important areas in the Eastern, in Europe, to argue the WPA case. And part of it is not apart from our thinking on this, which is influenced by our financial situation. Because when you have money, you tend not to think in a certain way because these things call for money. But I think that we have to find a way of introducing WPA politics to the wider international community in a way that we haven't been doing for many years. And I think that is an area that we have to pay some attention to because whether we like it or not, the history of Guyana has been a history that nothing of significance happened without the influence to some extent in a big way by external forces, and you have to accept that as a reality, and you have to direct a politics, okay, to deal with that reality. And this carried me to the US position on elections post-2020. We know what Biden, we know what Trump them do. So I don't have to spend much time on that. But since the Democrats came into power, they have been making the point that Guyana needs inclusive governance. And this is one of the few times in my political life I agree with the Americans. I'm saying to Guyanese and particularly the African community, African leaders, this is the first time, okay, in my judgment, the Americans have took a position that is not 100% self-serving, and they open up the diplomacy, okay, to help Guyana resolve this ethnic problem and this lack of inclusion, because I think they understand the consequences of that in light of the kind of money that we're going to get from oil. And I think I'm saddened that the African community, including the African political leadership, have not been holding the American foot to the fire by agreeing with it, calling for inclusive governance before elections, mobilizing ourselves and putting pressure on the government, okay, and also the Americans to make good, you know, their diplomacy to see that has happened. You know, I think it's a major history going to judge us very seriously. It's a major mistake. We letting the PPP off the hook, and I'm very concerned about it.
And so I understand your concern, but as someone who's a little bit closer than you to the African Guyanese leadership, there are some steps in that direction. Maybe baby steps, but it's not as bad as it was a year ago.
But time is not on our side.
Your point is well taken. Your point is well taken, but the Black leadership has been really doing a lot of outreach to the international community, raising these questions. I myself have been part of some of those outreaches, you know. And
but my point is not the outreach. The key thing is the major player say you must get inclusive government. Is you know to say I want it.
Yeah.
And this one you got to make no outreach to say that.
No, well, I'm not talking about the political leadership. You said the Black leadership, but I'm saying
the Black leadership outside the party.
Outside of the political party. I'm not talking about the political party here, which has been doing that. People have been asking the WP about coalition politics, largely because on this program, on a lot of program, people are somewhat nervous that up to this point we have not given any indication as a political opposition whether in fact we be going as a coalition or not. How concerned is the WPA about that development or lack of development?
I think the WPA is very concerned because this is a time if we fight in the time factor. And you know that elections, the time of the election lies with the government. The government will say to you, we're going to carry the elections right down to the end of next year in December, November, and they could call it mid-year. They could call it any time. So the time factor is not on our side. And therefore, the political opposition, the people is quite right to become disgusted with the length of time that the political opposition is taking to announce a new coalition. And the WP have made it clear we are prepared to walk on two legs. We're prepared to fight for constitutional reform and to push that struggle as far as it could be pushed. But we're committed to elections. And more so, we're committed to going into elections as a coalition. We have already made our minds on those matters. So for us, we're waiting on the others. And I don't want to get into name calling because we know the PNC said that, quote unquote, they're ready, But I don't know, and I'm a little careful on that because, and I'm not picking, but I think sometimes you got to say these things. While the WPA is committed to a coalition, we believe that the PNC, given what happened in the previous coalition where they were the major partners, they need to give some assurances and they need to engage in public self-criticism of what happened there in order to consolidate and to create the right atmosphere for both coalition partners and for the people. The people, we could see that we learn from our mistakes. It is not enough for the PNC to say we're ready to discuss coalition without a public assessment and self-criticism. Okay, even if the feel self-criticism is too strong a word, but you have to make an assessment. I remember when the PPP lost the elections in 2015, Jack Dionne PPP made an assessment why they lose. You can't remember all the implications of it, but they did make a public assessment. The PNC, since the PNC will be the major party in a coalition, and since they had a major responsibility in the previous coalition, they have to say how they intend to move forward in the new coalition. But having said that, I think time is running out on us. We have to get this coalition talks going and to begin to confront the PPP with unity rather than division, because division will really alienate large sections of the opposition base and make it easy for the PPP to run away with the elections. And as I said, time is not on our side. I don't want to get into analysis of what happened in the AFC and so forth, because sometimes these things, we're not as mature political people as we ought to be. And sometimes we think our comrades are politically mature. And when you engage in some objective analysis of the party, and so you're surprised to see the behavior. We have to be very careful with that as WPA, because we are critical to keeping a coalition together. Because I don't think, I could hardly see the AFC going in a coalition with the PNC without WPA. So I think we have to be, we have a special role to play.
And on that note, Brother Tacuma Ogunseye, we have been at it for more than an hour. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your insights with us on this Monday evening. Our program tonight, of course, focused on the WPA. Tomorrow night, Dr. Henry Jeffrey is going to be here. Professor Clive Thomas is going to be here on Thursday night to weigh in on the cash transfer as the author, the Guyanese author of the cash transfer. We're going to be doing a one-on-one with Professor Clive Thomas to be aired on Thursday night. So tomorrow night, Henry Jeffrey, Thursday night, Professor Clive Thomas. So we have a full week ahead of us. Tacuma, as we go to your closing thoughts.
Well, my closing thought is that the WPA and the collective opposition have won a major victory. We have forced the PPP to adopt, in part, some of our policy ideas. And I think that we have to now use that to tie the feet to the fire. And we have to prepare our constituents and the country as a large to deal with any machinations with the PPP on the implementation of the cash transfer, to make sure that opposition supporters suffer the same fate as in the COVID handout. And we have to warn them that politics has to be not on. Politics is a very public thing. Everything can't be secret. We have to begin to tell the country and tell the PPP, this is $200,000. These supporters need it. You're gonna get you supporters and give you supporters, and they're gonna pass like the crash grant. We're gonna deal with this matter totally different, and we begin to organize our people for total different response. So you gotta make up your mind. We have to begin to shift. Okay, the politics in a direction where the PPP know there's a price to pay for certain behavior. I end at that point.
A price to pay for certain behavior. Tacuma Ogunseye of the Working People's Alliance, co-leader of the Working People's Alliance. For those of you who missed the press conference this morning, it is on our page, Politics 101 page, on CAMS TV page. You can go on those pages and note the press conference, listen to the press conference, watch the press conference there. There's a price to be paid for certain behavior. Thank you very much, my brother. And I'll see you most likely next week, Monday.
Thank you.
And to your audience, thank you all, as usual. Without you, we cannot have this movement. Without you, we cannot win anything. And we are winning small things, which are going to have big consequences. Tomorrow night, Dr. Henry Jeffrey is going to be here with us. See you all then.
When we speak of civil liberties and civil rights, people are beginning to understand that the most fundamental of these is the right to work in our society. And what is occurring in Guyana is that the government is making political capital out of the indefensible position of one who is either unemployed or is very close to the line of being unemployed.
I want to say to you all, in no uncertain terms, that this government is disrespectful to black people. And if people disrespect you, you have a right to disrespect them.
I am saying now that we have started, now that we have come together, do not sleep. Don't let us go back quietly into the night. Protest must be the order of the day.